National mediator for Syria will hold separate meetings with the government and the opposition after the warring sides failed to find any common ground during the first day of the Geneva II peace conference. Diplomats hope to bring Syria's bitter rivals together for their first face-to-face talks on Friday. Egor Piskunov reports from Switzerland.
The Prime Minister, I'm sorry to... can you just wrap up?
Yourself, you live in New York, I live in Syria. I have the right to give the Syrian version here in this forum.
The first day of the conference was expected to be spent listening to formal statements. Instead, it was the scene of bitter exchanges, as the Syrian opposition pressed on with its calls for President Assad to step down.
I think that Assad is the problem, and Assad, I don't think the problem will be any solution without Assad going from power, stepping down.
A change of power in Damascus is something Washington is pushing for as well.
Bashar Assad will not be part of that transition government.
But according to the UN Secretary General, this is neither up to Washington nor any other outside players to decide.
The Syrians themselves have the primary responsibility to end the conflict, determine their political system and future, and start rebuilding their country.
While Damascus is willing to discuss anything from combating terror to a partial ceasefire, anything that is except Assad's resignation, it seems the parties have a different understanding of the goals of the talks. Indeed, they only agree on one thing, that a political solution is the only way.
No one should doubt. No one's trying to gloss this over, that this is the beginning of a tough and complicated process. More than 40 countries and organizations, and all suggest together how this must end. That it has to have an inclusive Syria.
The statements were indeed emotional, and there were mutual accusations. But what's most important is that all the parties involved want direct talks to start as soon as possible.
The first round of negotiations, mediated by the UN and Arab League Special Envoy on Syria, is expected to last 1 week.
After nearly 3 years of extreme violence, it isn't a surprise the two sides of the Syrian conflict aren't getting along very well. Frankly, just getting them in the same building may already be considered a diplomatic breakthrough, not to mention the talks, which are scheduled to continue on Friday. Egor Piskunov, RT, Montreux, Switzerland.
And despite the mutual hostility, diplomats say that both Syria's government and opposition forces have signaled their willingness to discuss ceasefires, prisoner swaps, and the delivery of humanitarian aid. Analysts say hope in breaking the deadlock rests with the international mediators' efforts.
They must understand that neither one of them is able to really gain military victory over the other in the battlefield. So they need to reach some sort of accommodation for one another. The opposition cannot dictate and say that Assad cannot be a part of any future Syria. And the Syrian government cannot lump everybody into the basket of terrorists, so to speak. So each one of them must reach out, and I believe that they will. Ultimately, they can. This is going to take a great deal of time, a great deal of attention, and a great deal of goodwill on part of those who are advocating both sides.